Cowboy Up Podcast, where talk is all about the West. This episode is brought to you by White Stallion Ranch and produced by Cowboy Spirit USA. Journalist David McCumber had a great idea. Pitch a book about spending a year working as a ranch hand. He found an enthusiastic publisher, and then he found a Montana ranch. He shares his year of adventures with our cowboy hosts Russell True and Alan Day.
Morning, Alan. We've had some good rain. It put some puddles on the ground.
My favorite time of the year is right after a rain. Always.
Yeah, you know, we have conflict here, right? Because the guests, they don't always love the rain.
Yeah.
And there's even those that blame us for it. And
I'd love to be blamed for rainy.
I always think, man, you're giving me some credit I don't deserve. But anyway, on the other hand, it makes the desert so much more beautiful, and it's so needed almost always that we have to embrace it and accept the little bits of.
I have to break in for a minute here and tell you that, you know, rancher's life is dependent on rain and all that, and so you'd love to be able to say, well, I made it rain, and in my case, I did. I learned how to seed the clouds and make it rain, and so I could say with some truth that I made it rain, and I don't know anybody else that could say that.
I don't know anybody else, and of course those stories are great ones. We'll have to do a show just on that sometime. And of course our weather isn't as extreme as when you were in South Dakota. And were you training those wild horses in the middle of the winter?
They're out there every day. We don't punch a time card, so and they need the same amount of hay and they need the same amount of care every day. So. Yeah, some days are prettier than others, obviously. But,
were you feeding in the winter?
Yeah. We put up 3,000 tons of hay.
Wow. Yeah. From the ranch.
Yeah. It was all native hay, you know, but we had.
Wow. And what did you put them in? Big round bales? Or?
Big round, 1,700-pound bales. So.
Wow.
I didn't wrestle them much. We had the good equipment, you know, to.
Yeah, it's good to hear about them. I don't want anything to do with that. I'm in Arizona. Well, anyway, our guest knows something about this stuff. He took a year to experience 4 seasons of a cattle ranch, working as a ranch hand up there. Journalist David McCumber, he joins us. He's the author of The Cowboy Way, Seasons of a Montana Ranch. And, you know, we're a little involved in Montana, and my dad grew up there, but he left, and I have no interest in being there in the winter. But David is the executive editor of the Arizona Daily Star, our last standing daily newspaper here in Tucson, and a big part of our little town of Tucson, getting bigger all the time. He was managing editor of the Seattle Post-Intelligencer. He founded the Big Sky Journal magazine. We love that magazine, by the way. That is a really beautiful art. My partner, Jay Wells, loves that magazine, and we've advertised our OTO, Montana's First Dude Ranch, in that magazine because it has such a broad circulation, well beyond Montana. You also served as Washington bureau chief for Hearst Newspapers. Besides Cowboy Way, David has written 2 other books, X-Rated, A Story of Sex, Money, and Death, and Playing Off the Rail, A Pool Hustler's Journey. He's co-authored a 4th, An Air That Kills, an investigation of thousands of asbestos-related deaths and illnesses in Libby, Montana, and also across the country. It's great to have you sitting here with us, David. Thanks for coming.
Well, it's fantastic to be here. I'm very, very pleased to be invited.
Well, perfect.
Well, to jump forward a minute, you were 44 years old when you went up to Montana to be a ranch hand. I can't wait for you to describe what talked you into that and how was it. And, you know, I mean, that's a huge jump.
Well, it certainly is. And I found out just how big it was. You know, at age 4, I was, I guess, 43 when I started, and I turned 44 while I was on the ranch. But, you know, I found out why there are a diminishing number of people cowboying at that age. And it was a great learning experience, obviously, and we can go into all the stuff I learned, because it's funny when I showed up to ask for this job, which is a whole story in itself. The rancher Bill Galt, who is now one of my best friends in life, said, "What do you know about ranch work?" And I said, "I don't know bleep." And he said, "Glad you said that. I already knew it." And that was exactly what I knew. But I very quickly, I started in January, and I very quickly learned about feeding hay and 20 below weather, and I learned about emergency C-sections, and I learned about cows that seem to want to have their calves in the middle of a frozen creek, and there was no downtime.
I got to back up a minute though. What prompted you out of your other life to just step up and decide you want to be a Montana rancher?
Well, I wouldn't presume to be a rancher, but I was always curious about cowboying. I've spent most of my life in the West, and as I say here, because I've always been in the West, I've often thought about cowboy work, and thinking and doing are different. And so I had the idea that I wanted to separate reality from Hollywood and write a book that told people what it was really like to go
So
to work.
your intent was to write a book after you'd done a year of ranching, that?
Well, yeah, that was my intent was to go and work on a ranch for a year to learn about it so I could write a book about it. And so I wrote a proposal to that effect, and I sent it off, and all of a sudden I had several publishers interested in making a deal on that book. And so then I had to find a ranch that would take me. And I had a dear friend in Montana, veterinarian, one of the best equine vets in Montana, a guy named Sid Gustafson. His sister is currently lieutenant governor of Montana. But Sid's first cousin is Bill Galt. And the Galt family has been ranching in Montana for a long time. It's actually a pretty great story in itself, which I tell in the book. He said, you ought to go see Bill's place and see if you can work there, because he does some things the old-fashioned way and some things the new way. And he's out there every day. You won't outwork him, but you'll learn a lot from him. So I thought, boy, that just sounds great. And then I did a little research about the ground, and there's a lot of history there, and so everything about it just seemed right. So I sent Bill a letter. Now, of course, he threw it away. So I sent him another letter, and I didn't hear, and what I didn't know was he took the second letter to his stepmom, Louise Rankin Galt, who was a powerful influence on Bill, and said, what do I do with this guy? And she said, you better talk to him. But he didn't call. I mean, he was busy ranching. He didn't call. So finally, I thought, I'm going to have to move on to another place, try someplace else, but I'm going to call him. So I called him, and I just happened to hit a day, as he's in the middle of at that time, he was calving that time of year. He's no longer calving that time of year, but he was, and he had a hand leave, and, it was cold January, and he kind of needed somebody, and so he said, well, you better come up and talk to me. So I drove up and walked into the calving shed, not knowing it was a calving shed, but I did, and all of a sudden somebody said, hey, you, help me move these calves out, and so I immediately started fumbling around doing what I could do. And so Bill shows up in a little while, and he's taking a load of hay down the road and on an 18-wheeler, and he said, come sit in the cab and talk to me. So I sat up there, and he said, what do you know about ranch work? And I said, well, I don't know bleep. And he said, glad you said that. I already knew it. And so that, kind of set me back a little bit. And then he said, you're not one of these tree huggers, are you? And that kind of irritated me a little bit. I said, well, I've got a few splinters in my chest, and I'm proud of them. And he said, well, guess what? So am I. You take a look around this place. I use as little chemicals as possible. I take care of the ground. I don't skin it. And I do that because it's my paycheck and it's my family's heritage. And I don't need any pink-ass scientists from the state coming in and telling me how to do it. And I thought, I'm going to like this guy. And so we talked a little bit more, and he said, well, look, he said, if you don't work out as a hand, you're down the road. I said, that's all I can ask. That's fine. I said, when you want me to start? And he said, tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock. So tomorrow morning, next morning, I was there, and for the next year I was there. And it was, and his spread is, he's got, he doesn't talk about this, but he's got about 100,000 acres. And he runs around 5,000 pair most years.
Wow.
It's pretty good cow operation. And he raises cow horses, and he's got a tremendous operation. And I didn't know how lucky I was to be there. And it was true. He did do some stuff the old way. He, drug calves to the pot brand, and flood irrigated a lot. Although he also had some pivots. And boy, you go to the ranch now. I mean, there's no sticks and dams to be found. It's all electronic now. So I'm glad I was able to see that. But he also had really modern haying equipment. We put up 15,000 ton hay that year. And so I learned about what was involved in that process, which is a heck of a lot of work. From not knowing anything, I was able to learn a little bit about a lot of things.
So it was a happy year?
It was an incredible year for me.
And you had set out, I'm going to set aside a year, and I'm going to be a cowboy rancher for a year, and then I'm going to go be a rocket scientist or something else?
No, I didn't know that. I just knew that I knew that I needed to experience the cycle of the cow. The cow tells you, that's the process that tells you, have you seen everything that goes on a ranch? And so I did that. And, the tough thing was you can't stop and take notes, while you're in the middle of trying to catch a bull that's, in the wrong place, or trying to, whatever you're doing, there's just no time. And so every night when I got back to the bunkhouse, I knew I had to get my clothing washed, and I had to feed myself, and I had to write something that would enable me to trigger those memories when I sat down to write the book.
Oh, and every night then you'd keep a journal.
Yeah, I had to do that, and some nights it was 200-300 words, and other nights I'd get a couple sentences out, and some nights I fell asleep with my forehead on my laptop, So it just that's how I was able to do it, though, was to kind of keep track on a day-to-day basis.
What took you most by surprise with when you got into it with both feet?
Well, there were so many surprises. I mean, I write a lot about the first day, which was your average 15-hour, 16-hour day. And at the end of it, one of the last things we had to do was go check the drop. We had to go check the heifers to see We had, the older cows all out fending for themselves, but we checked those heifers to see if they were
need some help.
And so sure enough, there's this at the end of this day there was this heifer that was clearly about to try to calf, and so we brought her in, put her in a jug, and started to try to help her a little bit, and she hip locked, we just couldn't get that calf, and so called Bill, and he said, well, we got to do a C-section. He said, get her in the chute, and so we put her in a squeeze chute in the shed there, and pretty soon Bill comes down, and I'm kind of waiting to see the vet, and I noticed Bill's scrubbed up. He's got scrubs on, and he's cleaned up. And I said, "You're going to do the C-section?" And he said, "Yeah, I kill fewer of them than the vet does."
I think that's probably true.
Yeah, and so he did, and he had the whole crew there, and he basically put on a clinic on how to do a C-section. He showed every step, and he would go around and quiz the members of the crew. Now, Mr. Fletcher, what's this and what's this? And sure enough, he got that calf out and sewed Mom up, and within 24 hours, she was, the calf was attached, and they were good to go. And that was quite a surprise on my first day. I think the biggest surprise to me, though, was the feeling of intense responsibility that you have relating to the animals. The cows and horses on that ranch are completely dependent on you for their well-being. And when you're dealing with the kind of elements that you have in Montana, and 20 below and blowing snow and all the rest of it, it really comes home to you that you got to take care of those animals no matter what it takes.
What were your first week or two like there? Was it different than what you thought it would be, and was it like, holy Moses, what am I doing here?
I didn't have any, really. I tried to avoid any preconception of what it was going to be like. But I could never have guessed what it was. I spent an awful lot of time cleaning jugs and pulling a few calves and taking. I remember bringing in a calf who was born in a creek, and this calf was chilled down real bad, and put the calf in a hot box and fed that calf, and looked like it was doing really good 24 hours. And I'm in the calving shed doing something else, and I look over, and the calf's down, and we lost that calf. It was it really made me realize how fragile life is. How fragile life on the ranch is.
Yeah. Well, we better take a break at that.
Well, once again, thank you for listening to the Cowboy Up Podcast. I'm Stan Houston, and it's my privilege and pleasure to kind of help put this wonderful program together, and we appreciate you. We really love you for what you are and what you do. And, of course, being that this is kind of coming up to the Valentine's weekend, not only are we liking and loving you, we are bringing to you the magazine that we love. That's right, True West Magazine, and we have a real Valentine of a guy to tell us about it. Stuart, you're on.
Thank you, Stan. Well, very happy Valentine's to all our listeners out there on the Cowboy Up Podcast. And that's ironic. The fact is that I live out in Prescott, Arizona, and we not only celebrate Valentine's on February 14th, but also Statehood Day. Arizona, most people know, is the Grand Canyon State. It's also known as the Valentine State or the Baby State because it was number 48 before Alaska and Hawaii. And we also like to have great arguments at True West Magazine on whether Hawaii is a Western state. Actually, I had a professor who said, how about Guam? It's the farthest west you can go in the United States. But that's for another conversation. We've got a great new issue coming out in our March-April edition. It's our 22nd annual Heritage Travel issue. It's a collector's edition. It's one of our biggest issues of the year. So if you're planning travel and trips out west, including to some of the true ranch properties in Montana or Arizona, you want to check out this issue. We've got a lot of good information in there about going out to the true ranches. Also, there's a cover story here that's close to my heart. It's called The Day Tom Mix Died. What really happened on that lonely stretch of desert highway? The article is credited to my late father, Jeb Rosebrook, who was a big fan of Tom Mix and Western Stars. And years ago, my dad and I did an article for Arizona Highways on Tom Mix and Cowboy Heroes, the Silver Strain from Arizona. And maybe the year before he died, my dad had always wanted to write about Tom Mix and had pitched it to Bob Bosbell, and he wasn't able to get it done. But we have completed the story and for him, and so this is a major feature. And actually, after our last trip to the White Stallion, Bob Bell and I drove out to the Tom Mix monument and went hiking around the Tom Mix wash where his car went into the ditch. But you'll need to read the article, find out what really happened to Tom Mix on that day in October 12th, 1940. We also have two original stories in this issue, one by Bill Greneman. It's called The Lone Star Destiny, The Gathering Storm Before the Alamo. We're looking at a big anniversary of the Battle of the Alamo coming up in a couple of years, and so we had Bill take a look at what was happening and who was going to be joining this big and famous revolution in Texas. So it's a good story our readers are going to enjoy. And then Chris Enns, who's a favorite of ours at True West, she has a new book out on frontier doctors. And this one's about a railroad lady who saved lives. She's actually Dr. Sophia Herzog. She's one of the rare women who served on railroads as a doctor, and also a rare in the West, a woman doctor. She's very interesting. You'll have to read about how she had some very interesting techniques on how to get bullets out of wounded men. So those are some of the big features in this issue. And travelers who are interested in going to Montana, Colorado, California, Arizona, we have great features in there. And we also have I wrote the feature on Arizona, and then we got another great feature on Wyoming. If you love rodeos and rendezvous, Kenny Moulton's written a great story about Wyoming. And then if you've ever been to the Panhandle on Route 66, we have a really nice feature on traveling to the Texas Panhandle and Amarillo. So check out this new issue of True West Magazine, and you'll probably take it with you as you make your travel plans and travel across the West this summer.
Incredible. I can hardly wait.
Well, I thank you, Stan.
You really do a good job. Very, very good. Particularly, I actually lived quite close to, when my time in Arizona, we went by the Tom Mix wash all the time and always thought about that. But I never knew about the story. But of course, now I will, thanks to you. So I'm looking forward to that.
So what was your favorite, looking back, what was your favorite time there?
Well, my favorite chore on the ranch, and people laughed at me for this because it was everybody else's least favorite. My favorite chore on the ranch was fixing fence, because it took me to places on the ranch that I might never have seen. I mean, when you've got a place that big, you don't get everywhere. And but going around the fence, for one thing, you're by yourself and you're in beautiful places on the ranch.
but you can also see that you've done something. You've made progress. Fence wouldn't hold cows when you got there, and it would when you're done. And that felt good. And that's one thing about ranch work. I loved it when you could see what you got done that day, and so I loved fixing fence. I enjoyed so much of it that I didn't expect to enjoy riding Japanese quarter horses, the four-wheelers. I didn't expect to I didn't expect to enjoy that, and I ended up really appreciating what you could do on one, the riding days, of course, they were few and far between, but they were the best days when you could get a horseback, on that ranch. I mean, you just can't beat that. It's like nothing. Whether we were, trailing cows or whether we were hunting them, I write in here about, in the fall, going to get around, cows that are either not where they're supposed to be, or they're in very remote places, where you got to bring them to shorter fences so that you can wean them and ship calves and so forth. And those were great days. I just loved, again, you're out in the back of beyond, you're away from everything. And, you're riding a horse and doing what the horses love to do, which is get around cows. And that was so much fun.
Did you have a special horse that you bonded to?
I had two or three that I really bonded to. And there was one that, the rancher put me on, kind of late in my tenure, when he figured that I wouldn't get bucked off, or I had a good chance of not getting bucked off. But it was a horse called Spider, and a little long in the tooth, but it was a great cow horse. But Spider's flaw was could not stand motor vehicles of any kind. And the reason he was on that ranch was he'd dang near killed a rancher on another ranch, dragging him after spooking because the truck got close. Well, so I'm on this kind of famous horse for being a little particular about not being around motor vehicles, and one of the young hands comes zipping up to me on a four-wheeler.
Intentionally, or
no, just to say hi. How are you doing? Okay. And oh man, that was we had.
Did he buck or run off or what?
He bucked. He certainly did buck. I managed to stay on the right side up, but it was a moment.
So part of your title is Seasons of a Montana Ranch.
Yeah.
What was your favorite season?
Well, you can't beat the fall. I mean, I just love the fall. I mean, for one thing, the whole place is alive. I mean, you see wildlife everywhere. Plus the work you're doing in the fall, the hay's all put up, and you're bringing in cows, and that's the most fun. I mean, I thought, the weather's great. It was just that it was the best, but it's all great. I wrote a lot about spring because after you go through the winter, I mean, the rancher told me, he said, he told me this really early during the winter. He told me, there's a day every year when I realize that it's actually springtime, and I can look around and say, made her through another one. And a couple months later, I was out with him putting out salt and driving around, and he looked around and he said, this is the day. I just thought that was so cool. You really get an intense relationship with the seasons and with the weather. I mean, when that wind starts blowing from the west in the late fall, you're in for it. You're a lot closer to, I really love the outdoors. I'm a fanatic fisherman, and I like to hike. And so I recreated a lot of places in Montana before I went and did this. But the relationship that you get to the land and the weather and the country, working on it, is completely different and completely more complex and intense than it is when you're just recreating on it. And that really taught me a lot.
So did you have not just chores, but goals every day that, going to get these cattle to a new range or a lot, get this hay baled or?
Well, sometimes I knew what those overarching goals were. A lot of the time that was between the rancher and the foreman. I got to know what the specific task was that I needed to get done that day. And how it fit into the big picture, that was for another time to think about. I just knew what I had to get done.
Did it make you want to go back, or did you get your fill of it, or what?
I go back every year. I have been back every year. This was in 1996. That was the year I spent on the ranch. So it's been a while. And I've never not been back, and the last 8 years I've been living in Montana, and I kidded Bill. I said, I saw more of you when I was living in Washington D.C. and coming back to the ranch than I do when I'm living 100 miles away. And, but I go, as I say, Bill's a darn good friend, and he always invites me, and I always come back. I've been, fortunate to get asked to the gather a few times, and I tend to like to go back and help wean, and then I disappear into the backcountry and go fish, and I couldn't do that when I worked on the ranch, but I can do it now that I'm a dude.
What part of Montana?
It's I would say central west, maybe north central is better. It's north of Helena and just east of Great Falls.
Okay.
Our little dude ranch is south of Great Falls, 45 minutes out of Lewistown.
Well, it's not far from this ranch.
Yeah.
This ranch is divided into two big chunks. The back chunk is the one that's closer to Cascade, and that is, as I say, it's the most beautiful country. That creek I mentioned runs through it, and there's these beautiful red rock cliffs, and that creek runs 25 miles, and I've walked all of it twice, and then I've walked chunks of it a lot more than that. It is, and I've seen absolutely everything in that country. I've seen mountain lion, wolverine, black bear, golden eagles, bald eagles, you name it. It's all there. And, you get to places on that ranch where that if 5 people, actually see what you're seeing that year, that's a lot. And there aren't many places you can say that in the world anymore.
Right. So do you think, cowboys, and cowboys, it's been a good word, a bad word.
Right.
The romantic image of the West, we'll call it the iconic image. But do you think there are very many people now that you've sort of embraced both sides, right? Because you weren't.
Yeah.
You knew nothing.
That's right.
Now you know. The world get a sense of how many people what percentage of people really have an understanding of what being a cowboy is?
Well, I think very few, because, the Hollywood version is so at variance with reality. But, that was my stated goal in doing this book.
Is
and I
to
think,
help.
Yeah, I think I've maybe communicated, and obviously it's what you guys do, is talk about what it's really like as opposed to what people might think it's like. So, not many, but the ones who don't are sure missing a lot, because
when you're on the ground out wherever you are at the particular time, what's your favorite part? What part do you enjoy the most?
Well, as I mentioned fixing fence, which I love.
Which makes me scratch my head.
Yeah,
you're in the minority there.
I know I am, but I really did enjoy it. And because I did, I got to do it a lot. Because
I bet you did. I bet you did.
I pounded an awful lot of steel posts and hung a lot of wire. And I did enjoy it. Anything to do with the animals. When we were working cattle, I really enjoyed that. With the signal exception of a few truly malevolent beasts. We had a bull on the ranch that I chased for the better part of 2 days trying to get that dang bull into where he was supposed to be, and I'll never forget that. But usually anything, whether you were doctoring them or whether you were running them through and preg testing or, whatever it was you were doing, I enjoyed that. I just enjoyed the animals. And again, it's not without its physical risk. Nothing like being in a round corral with, 500 pair and getting stepped on and kicked and this and that while you're trying to wean them.
But and they can kick just about any direction. You learn that fairly.
You
early,
learn that,
right?
but I liken it in the book to a fadeaway jump shot. They look like they're out of range of you, and then boom, there's those two hind feet coming right towards you. And I really learned to respect that move.
So I want to totally change direction. When I was a kid, my favorite thing to do, it was the only thing ever came naturally to me, was playing pool.
Oh.
And I was never a hustler, although when I was a kid, the Wranglers, sometimes we would be going somewhere to do something important, and they would have to stop at a bar.
Yeah.
Because it was there. And it would be rude to drive by it. Right?
Absolutely.
So there was often pool tables in those bars, and sometimes they would use me as a minor money making routine because I looked like I couldn't play, and I could play reasonably well. But a hustler I was not. We're intrigued. What got you going on a pool hustler book?
I like to investigate subcultures, and that's what this book is. It's a very distinct, discrete,
well known.
Yeah. Well, same thing with pool players. When I was a kid, 11, I guess, 12, I used to our Boy Scout meeting was in the Elks Club, which was right across the alley from the pool hall. And so I used to go over to the pool hall, and my mother and my grandmother absolutely detested that pool hall. They'd walk by with their noses in the air, and I was always taught it was absolutely the den of sin,
Yeah.
Well, I loved it. I walked into that pool room, and there's big old 5x10 snooker tables, and these old guys playing pool, and I knew that I wanted to be one of them. And so I started playing, and I got, taught painfully by a bunch of railroaders and wheat farmers in my hometown in western Nebraska. But I learned, and it always stayed with me. It was like a dormant virus, at the base of my spine, waiting to come out again. And I met this guy. I was in San Francisco researching a book, and I met this guy who was a wonderful, world-class pool player. He was, at the time, he didn't have to get beat by anybody. He was probably one of the 15 or 20 best players in America at that time. And funny, smart, completely not stereotypical. He didn't smoke, didn't drink, a student of Eastern religion, just really really an interesting fellow. And so the more I talked to him, the more I thought how much fun it would be to take this guy on the road and delve into the culture of pool. So I took a couple of short trips with him.
He wasn't opposed to a little bet?
No, he was not opposed to making money at his craft. And,
no. there's pool players, and then there's pool players that play for money. So
right.
I just wanted to make that difference.
But he, and most of the time, so anyway, I wrote a proposal and I ended up writing that book for Random House. And so I hit the road with him. I got a nice advance from Random House, and I stuck it in a leg wallet and a few other places on my anatomy, and it hit the road, and most places we went, it wasn't hustling because he was known, especially around the western United States. He was very well known. So we'd go and we'd play whoever had money. We'd just go in and play. We'd match up and play. Or whoever had a stake horse that had money and wanted to back him. Well, then we went to the East Coast and went into New York City, and he wasn't so well known. And we actually did, just for the sake of the book, mind you, we went in and played drunken businessmen and, spent 3 nights kind of laying down a bit of a story in this pool room, and then got a really good game and walked out of there with $3,000, and they knew they had been had, and that was kind of an awkward situation. Yeah. But we got out of there okay, and
it was a little touchy for a while.
It was, but
makes the book better.
It did. Yeah. So we went all over Canada and United States and Canada playing high dollar pool, and I got to write a book about it. And the pool player ended up being a darn good friend of mine. He's passed away now, but he was a terrific player, and in the process, I fell in love with playing one pocket. I just think it's just such a great game, and so I have an old 4.5 by 9 antique in my living room, and I play as often as I can. So
fascinating. Well,
is that your favorite game, one pocket?
It is. It combines. It's a very simple game.
They all go in one pocket.
Yeah, it sounds simple. The first person to make, one of you gets this pocket and one of you gets this pocket at the head of the table, the 2 corner pockets, by where the rack is. And the first person to make 8 balls in their pocket wins. This sounds really simple, but it involves a tremendous amount of defense. Involves banks, involves straight shooting, it involves every aspect of the game that you can think of.
Any 8.
Yeah. Any 8 balls. Yeah.
I feel very ignorant. I've never heard of it.
But it's fun.
Well, what's the next subculture book?
Well, that's a good question. I have to say that I'm a little limited because I actually have a job now.
Yeah.
I'm working for a living, and I care an awful lot about the journalistic side of my career, and I care about Tucson and the Star a whole lot. I worked here in the late 70s and early 80s at the Star, and so coming back was an unexpected treat. And I'm proud to be the editor of the Star, and I want to do all I can do to make it succeed. So that's my focus right now. I will write another one of these days, but I'm not sure yet what it'll be.
What's journalism? Where's journalism headed? I'm talking about newspaper journalism. Is that on the rise?
It has been absolutely brutal. I think anybody who's been in this business over the last 2 decades really has either PTSD or survivor's guilt or both or some combination, I mean, it has been bloody. Newspapers have just lost revenue with the internet in so many different ways. Started out with classified advertising disappearing, and it's grown with it's so much more competition for advertising dollars in general, and we are sort of in a transition period. We're moving toward from a print advertising revenue based model to a digital subscription revenue based model. I mean, a lot of our revenue.
Describe that a little more.
A lot of our revenue is going to come from people who subscribe to us online. And we've gone, our company, Lee Enterprises, has gone from I think in 2019, when we first started looking at digital subscriptions as a significant source of revenue, I think we had 45,000 across the company at that point. We have 650,000 digital subscriptions now. So it's growing fast.
Wow.
But the corollary is we've got to get that average rate up to where people are paying 10 or 15 or 20 bucks a month for reading the paper online, and that's not a lot for content that you care about, and it's beginning to go in the right direction. People are beginning to understand that content that's valuable is worth money to if it's on the internet. I mean, you look at Netflix and all that sort of thing, but it's been a long haul to get people to understand that. And so in the meantime, a lot of print papers have gone by the boards, and a lot of them are struggling. The Star is smaller than it used to be, but we are thriving and doing well, and I am so proud of my staff, I can't tell you. I think we're delivering really great community journalism here in Tucson, and that's our goal.
Cool. What will be the success in the future? Will it be content, or will it be
well, that's what he's saying. He's got to get this digital subscription.
Yeah, but you're right. The content is what makes it. And it's a little different. You know, when it was all advertising, we were kind of in the newsroom, we were the necessary evil. You know, they would look at it. We were the bunch that spent all the money and wrote all the stories that irritated advertisers. It's different now. You know, these audience, the people on circulation side, they know they need great content to make their goals. So they're encouraging us. What's your next good story? What are you going to give us? So I like it.
So your question was on target.
Yeah.
I've heard that also on the video side. It's all about content.
Yeah.
But we've gone over, and Lynn is waving at us. But first of all, we want to leave people, and we're going to bring you back if you'll be. I know you got a big job, but maybe we can come back, talk about firefighting at the ranch and more about ranching and your books. You're going to be at the festival in March.
I am. Yeah. I'm proud to be on the festival board. The Star was a co-founder of the festival, right. And so I get to be on that board, and plus we have 10 authors that are Star authors every year, and we have our own stage and so that's really exciting to get our own group.
And your books, are they still all in print? Are they available? Or
that's a good question.
Amazon will
have them. I think they probably all are.
Yeah.
I think they are.
And so, if they want to get with you, do you have a website? Or?
I have an email, dmccumber@tucson.com.
So that's dmccumber@tucson.com.
That's right.
And if they want to subscribe digitally to Tucson only, remaining daily, it's Tucson.com. Is that right?
I'd love to help them.
Right, and get that great local content. So we'll see you in March at the festival.
Oh, that'd be great.
You know, families and dude ranches, that's what people think of when they think of dude ranches. And of course, White Stallion Ranch is no different. Outdoor activities, there's all kinds of things to do together. Horseback riding, rock climbing, archery, shooting, hiking, tennis, basketball, horseshoes, swimming pool, hot tub. I don't know if you do spa services together, but we've got those. And of course, the game room with all those games and evening entertainment. Families really get together and enjoy that. But one of the great experiences is giving the kids a bit of independence, and you can't really absorb that until you experience it. And watching your kid run off with a bunch of other kids to go off on a ride
without you, or playing games after dinner, or going, hey, Mom, Dad, we're heading over to the game room. See you at dinner. It's just not too many places you get to do that. And people my age, we had a bit of history with that, but it just, the world today, it's a bit different. I think most importantly, the families leave with that memory of really truly experiencing a vacation, and a pretty varied vacation, all together, and with all those experiences shared, sometimes together, most of the time together, but not always, and everybody finding something they really enjoy. So, whitestallion.com, all the information, the website's pretty extensive, and you can call 888-977-2624, or most easily, whitestallion.com. You know, Alan, I love the premise of this book, and it's sort of, you know, it's closer to what we do than that famous movie City Slickers was, that changed our world, which was sort of like what we do, but not really at all. And yet, this is really somebody coming out because they want to, and being a cowboy and becoming one. And we say all the time, it's not that you're fourth generation from the Montana ranch. It's that you have that spirit and that want to, and you go and learn the skills. And somebody asked me the other day, they said, where do you get these wranglers? And I said, you know, we've departed from our old school. They had to be, you know, experienced with horses. We just want the right people, and then we'll train them. And so both from the visitor's perspective and our employees' perspective, this book's right on target for our lives.
All right, fans of the West, that's a wrap from the ranch. A shout out to Stan Houston and his production company. We are on Instagram and Facebook. Give us a follow. Next week, we talk ghost bears and a Yellowstone shipwreck and more. For now, we leave you with the inspiring song Reach for the Main by singer, songwriter, and cowgirl Cynthia Keefe. I'm Lynn Weezy Sneed, reminding you to sit tall and ride safe. The cowgirls ride in a raucous crush, irreverent, crazy, and brave. Big hearts racing through desert brush, chasing the freedom they crave. Trails twist and turn, and the hills are steep, forced to scramble and slide. Rain hand down hills, dug in deep. You signed on for the fast ride. Reach for the mane, lock your fingers in tight. Hold on for life. The roughest terrain. Remember, reach for the main. Back home, time stops with every call. You start to scramble and slide. Ground is crumbling, but you won't fall. Those cowgirls taught you how to ride. So you reach for the mane, lock your fingers in tight. Hold on for life. You can conquer the roughest terrain. Remember, reach for the main. You made it through the battle to get back in that saddle. You'll never have to ride alone
deterred.